much for coming in for our identity theft training today, which is going to be provided by Mr. Tim Edwards from the Orion Federal Credit Union. Please, if you have any questions, do ask those so therefore we can make sure that everybody understands the consequences or the things that you need to know about identity theft.
Thank you very much. How's everyone doing? Good. Again, my name is Tim Edwards. I'm with Orion Federal Credit Union. Thank you all for allowing me to be here. Hopefully today we're going to learn a few things. One of the things we're going to talk about today is identity theft and financial fraud. This is actually a really, it's a really big subject right now. Has been for the last couple of years. I've also oftentimes said this, bad guys, they don't get dumber, they actually get smarter. Okay, so you can come up with all the little techniques and procedures and all these things, but at the end of the day, bad guys, they're not stupid. And they do what they do, and they do it very well. And so the only thing we can do as individuals and consumers and that kind of thing is to protect yourself as much as you can, okay? I'm not saying that to scare you, but when we start looking at some of the statistics, you'll see what I mean. And so we're gonna go ahead and dive into this. So identity theft and financial fraud, and a couple of things we're going to go through. We're going to learn a lot today. We're going to learn about not just what to do to protect ourselves, but we're going to learn some statistics, because a lot of people think, well, it's never going to happen to me, but chances are, when you're talking to people, chances are there has been some kind of identity theft or financial fraud that's happened. For instance, have you ever had anything come out of your bank account? You pulled up your bank account and you're like, oh no, who is this? Where did that $50 come from? I didn't spend that, right? So many folks have. And so, that's one avenue of financial fraud. And so there's many different ways that it can happen. Identity theft statistics, so here's what we're looking at. So we're looking at 1 in 15 were victims of identity theft in 2017. That's over 16 million people in the U.S. So that's a lot of folks. Data breaches, data breach incidents, they have doubled since 2013. So they're not decreasing, they're actually increasing. How many of you now have the checking accounts with the little chip in the card? And we were all told that's gonna cure the world of all of its problems. But has it helped a little? Possibly. But at the end of the day, that technology has been around for a long time, actually. Probably the last 10, 15 years. It just recently came to the United States. So, again, bad guys are not stupid. They're fairly smart. They know what they're doing. In 2017, data breaches exposed over 170 million personal records. How many of you guys heard about was it Experian incident that happened, what was that, last year, maybe now 2 years ago, something like that? Here's what's interesting about that. And this is why everybody really should always be on guard. Now, does that mean that you're supposed to walk around scared all the time? Absolutely not. But you do have to do your due diligence. Make sure that you're watching your bank statements. Make sure that you're taking a look at your credit report every now and then to make sure that all the things listed on that credit report are yours, that you know where those items came from. I say that to say this: when Experian had their issue that happened, their big data breach that happened a year, 2 years ago now, what ends up happening many times, whoever the bad guy or bad guys were that got that information, sometimes what you will find is they will get your information and they'll sit on it. So it's not like, oh, well, I accessed your account, now I'm going to go ahead and start pulling money immediate. Sometimes that doesn't work that way. Sometimes what they will do is they'll get information and they'll sit on it. They can sit on it for a month, 6 months, year, 2 years, 3 years. And then all of a sudden, that's when things begin to transpire. So it is a good idea to make sure that you're staying on top of things. If you're not currently, which I'm hoping that you are, but if you're not currently looking at your bank statements every month, please do. Make sure that you are looking at that information. Make sure that those withdrawals are your withdrawals. Okay, it's very important. According to U.S. Department of Justice, average loss was over $1,300 per person, with a total loss in 2014 of over $15 billion. That's a lot of money in fraud. A lot of money. So it doesn't just happen many times overnight. Sometimes it can. Being in the banking industry as long as I have, been now 20, 21 years, I've seen a lot of that. Everything's perfectly fine. And then all of a sudden, you wake up one morning and half your bank account's gone. And it can, and it does happen. So the best thing to do is just to be sure that you're staying on top of it. Make sure that you're looking at it periodically. If you are currently with a financial institution, if they have a mobile app, I encourage everyone, at least in the morning, take just a moment, pull up the mobile app and take a look at the balances. Make sure the balances, because without going into detail, you kind of have a general idea of when you're looking at your account that, okay, that looks about right. Take a look at the balances. Take a look at some of the transactions just very quickly, just to make sure that they are your transactions. The sooner you catch things, the easier it will be for you, I can promise you. So what's some of the warning signs of ID theft? Like I just mentioned, looking at your withdrawals. Take a look at those withdrawals. Make sure that what you're viewing is your information. It's your withdrawal information. It's your transaction information. So make sure of that. If bills are not coming to you in the mail, you say, well, maybe you've got a credit card bill and all of a sudden you missed a payment because you never got that bill in the mail. Does that ever happen to you? Has me. And so you go, whoa, right? Where's, you're looking at your account now and you're going, whoa, past due? What do you mean? I never got that statement. Not saying this will happen every time. Could be just something very nonchalant. Could have been just the mailman or whomever dropped the envelope, or it got shredded, or something happened, just lost in the mail. However, it could be also a sign that someone is watching the mailman. As they drop the mail off, they're going right behind them, and they can thumb through that information and get some of your account information through things like statements and that kind of thing. If you're looking at your credit report, as I mentioned before, looking at the credit report, take a look at, you can actually pull a free copy of your credit report from all three companies, which is TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. You can pull a free copy of your credit report from all three companies once per calendar year. Okay, so you say, well, and I don't know if you've ever done that before. You can do that at annualcreditreport.com, annualcreditreport.com. And I think some of that information is also in the slide toward the end, but you'll be able to see that. But you definitely want to take a look at those. Make sure periodically that you're looking at that information. Is this my account? And so you definitely want to stay on top of that. If you look and you see something that's unfamiliar, try to figure out what that is before you jump the gun. But once you've kind of done your due diligence and you know for sure this is not mine, that's where you need to take action. This is another big one, the IRS. I've heard this on several occasions, people going to file their taxes at the end of the year, all to find out their taxes have already been filed for them, but they didn't do it. So somebody used their Social Security number. And so this was actually, I had a neighbor that this happened to just a couple of years ago. And so it hit pretty close to home. And so it's definitely a mess. It's a mess to fix because you have to prove everything. So definitely you want to stay on top of that. If your medical records, you'd think, well, that don't have anything to do with anything. But if you go to the doctor and your medical records that you're reviewing says that you have some illness or something, and you're going, no, that's not me. Again, it could be a sign of some form of fraud. So it's best to kind of stay on that as well. Make sure that when you're looking at your medical records, which a lot of folks don't, but you can review your medical records anytime you wish. But it's a good idea that when you go to the doc, at least periodically, maybe once a year, just take a look. Make sure that the medical records are legit. Make sure that that is you. My son, just recently, my little boy, it was the baby. He's a year and a half old. We took him to the doc here the day because he had a sniffle. And so we took him to the doc. We're waiting for the nurse to come out and get us. And waited and waited and waited and waited for quite some time. Finally, we're like, okay, we're seeing people go back before us, right? Well, there was another child that they called, when they called my son's name, another child went back. We didn't hear it. And so they did all this work on this other child, not realizing it was not mine. So they had to, and so that was a mess. So things like that, it's just best to make sure that you're staying on top of it. If you ever get anything in the mail, or you see something in email, or you hear something on the news about a data breach, make sure that you take it. Don't take it lightly. Make sure, first off, just like with the Experian data breach, make sure that you do your due diligence. I mean, as soon as I heard about it, I was out there checking to see if my name was part of it. Now, is there a whole lot that you can do? If there is, there's some things in which we will cover in just a moment. But it's just best to make sure that you're staying on top of it. Don't just take it lightly and think, that'll never happen to me, because chances are, based on statistics, it very well could happen to you. So make sure that you are taking a look at that. Know your rights. A lot of people don't fully understand their rights. So if some form of identity theft or financial fraud happens to you, a lot of people don't know their rights. They don't know what they can or cannot do. And listed here, we've got a few things. You can create an FTC identity theft report, which is a Federal Trade Commission. So you can actually go to their website and file that on there. Thank you. Place a 1-year fraud alert on your credit report. You definitely can do that as well. So this is actually one of the things I personally did when I heard about the data breach last year with Experian. So, this is, again, something that you can do. Place a 7-year extended fraud alert on your credit report. You can get free copies of your credit report. You can get fraud information removed. So if you're looking at the report and you see things that are not legit, you can have them removed. Now, I will tell you this, it probably will not happen overnight. Okay, they move fairly slow. So you definitely want to make sure that when you're looking at that and you see something, make sure that you go ahead and jump on it right then. A lot of times, not every time, but most of the time, what's on one credit report with one bureau will be on the other two. Okay, so always kind of keep that in mind as well. Now, I have seen it where it did not. That's actually it's a pretty common occurrence. But for the most part, what you normally see is that if it's on one, it's going to be on the others. So make sure that if you see something on one, don't just stop with that one. So if you see something on TransUnion, don't just call TransUnion and not the other two. Make sure to contact the others as well. And dispute any inaccurate information on the report.
I have a question for you. So when you talk about the fraudulent and the disputing information, what's the best way to go about doing that? Because I know there's people out there that say they can help you do that. So what would be a good way to go do?
Her question is if, what's a good way to dispute some of this information? If you see that there's some kind of fraudulent activity that has happened, what's the best way to dispute it? We're going to kind of actually look at some steps on that here in just a moment, so we're going to cover that. But it really just kind of depends on what type of fraud or what type of identity theft that it is, and where it's transpired and what it occurred on. So if it's on the report, on your credit report, you're going to contact the credit bureaus individually to dispute that information. If it's done with a credit card, you see fraudulent credit card transactions on your credit card, you're going to contact the credit card company first and foremost, and you want to make sure that they are aware of what is going on. If it's on your bank statement, so if you're seeing that things are coming out of your checking account that you didn't authorize, you don't know where they are, where they're coming from, you have no idea what they are, you will want to contact the financial institution to make sure that they are aware of what's going on, and so that you can take proper steps. So it's a good question. So how does identity theft occur? We covered several of those ways. One of those is, again, through data breach, which you will see from time to time. Before, when I was like a vice president of lending, I was over our credit card portfolio. And so every now and then our credit card company would send me an email, and it'd be just fraud alerts. And it's basically just saying, hey, Tim, here's a list of people that shopped at Target between this day and this day, and there was a breach that occurred during that time frame. These people could be potential identity theft, or they could see some form of identity theft. So what I did is I would contact those people individually. So I would call and contact them and say, hey, here's what's going on. No fraud has hit your account as of yet. My recommendation would be, let's go ahead and change your card number. So let's do away with this, and let's close this one and reopen a new number to ensure that there's no fraud that will happen. So unprotected internet connection. A lot of people don't think about that. You go to Panera Bread, or you go to some place where they have free Wi-Fi. You don't think about it. But if you've got your laptop and you're hooking into that free Wi-Fi, it's wide open. And there's all kind of things that could filter into your computer through those avenues. So it's a good idea just to make sure that you are protected there. Through phishing, how many of you have ever had anyone call you and ask questions, and you're asking them questions back, but they won't respond, but they're asking you, they want to know what's your account number, I'm so-and-so, I'm just trying to help you. What's the last four of your social, or what's your social security number, or can you give me your date of birth? What is your current address? And they haven't verified who they are, who they're with, or anything like that. That is probably a form of phishing. If you've ever seen it where you get an email, in which, of course, we all have, we get 1 million emails a day, and you see an email come in, and it's saying, hey, by the way, and it could be disguised as someone from your IT department. Hey, so-and-so in the IT department needs you to complete this questionnaire immediately, right? And so they have the proper names, everything looks legit, and all of a sudden you click the link and you start filling in the information, or sometimes when you click the link, it's already got your information. So it is best to make sure those are forms of phishing. And so that's people trying to fish to get information out of you, which, from everything that I have seen, that's probably one of the main ways people get your information, because they can get you before you ever really realize it. So make sure that if you're talking to someone, make sure you know who you're talking to. Dumpster diving, that's something a lot of people don't think about. If you please make sure that if you have statements of any kind, or whether it be bank statements or credit card statements, or even credit card offers, right? You get 1 million of those a day. Every day when I go check the mail, I've got 1 or 2. Don't just take it and go, oh, don't need that, and throw it in the trash. Again, someone could come behind you, look through your trash, find that. Many times it's a pre-approval. They'll fill it out with their information. Might be your name and your information, but they might put their address, so that way the card comes to their address and you don't even know that it's happening before it's already too late. So mail theft, we kind of talked about that. And then lost or stolen wallet, which again, you see that actually happen. That's, I mean, it still happens, no doubt, but some of the phishing ways and some of these other ways, data breaches, those are actually the main ways that your information is found out. Most common types of identity theft, credit card fraud. That's a big one. That's probably, well, it is the biggest one. It's one we always saw the most as well. And it's just because it's easy. Think about it. How many times do you go, and it's not just credit card here, but how many times do you use your debit card, credit card, that kind of thing? If you ever buy things online, if you're not doing your due diligence again to make sure that the company that you're purchasing from, first off, is a legitimate company, and second off, make sure that they are completely protected. Make sure that they're protecting your information. If you don't do those things, you just want the item, you jump in, you don't know how secure that is, and they could end up losing your information. So, employment or tax fraud, again, we talked about that. These are some of the ways these are some of the ways here that you can see phone or utility fraud, bank fraud. A lot of people would think bank fraud would be up there close to the top, but it's actually not. Loan or lease fraud, government documents. So this just kind of gives you an idea that, yes, by all means, your information can get out there in many different ways. So it's just, again, we're just kind of giving you food for thought here. Not trying to scare you. I've taught this before, and people go, they panic and they're like, I'm not coming out of my house, right? Well, no, I mean, there are just things that you have to keep watch. And so these are just some things to do. If you are a victim of identity theft or fraud, there are some steps here that you can take. And it's just, as we mentioned before, you have to contact the companies involved. So if it is on your bank, if it's with your bank account, you'll need to contact that financial institution. If it's something where you pull a credit report and you see that there is something on the report that you know is not yours, you'll want to contact the credit bureau and let them know, hey, I see this is not mine, and they will start the process for disputing that information. So you can, and again, these are just some things that you can do. You don't have to do these things, but these are some things that you can do. Close or freeze the account. I would actually recommend, if it's something to do with a credit card or a debit card, make sure that you not only just dispute it, but you need to make sure also that you close that number and reopen another. Okay, so if and it depends on how the transaction is transpiring. If it's coming through that credit card or that debit card line, which the institution will know, if it's just coming through that line, you don't necessarily have to go and close your whole account and reopen a whole new account. That's not necessarily the case. Many times it's just connected to that card number. So as long as you dispute that, close that particular card and have them reopen a new card with a new number, then you'll be fine. Also, just make sure to stay in close communication. Whomever you're speaking with at the institution, whether it be at with one of the credit bureaus or with your bank or a credit card company, make sure that you're getting their information. I tell everybody, make sure that you're writing down who you're talking to. Because chances are you might not, if you ever call back up there again, good luck getting the same person. You probably won't. That probably won't happen. So make sure that you're looking at, make sure you're writing down the name, the contact information. Ask the person, is there a direct line that I can reach you at? Okay, so these are just some things. Make sure you're communicating with them. This is one of the big things when being in this industry, I've told a lot of people, communicate with me. Let me know. If you have done something, communicate it. Let me know. We'll do the same with you, but make sure you're doing that with us as well. So again, we're looking at we're looking at if you're a victim of identity theft or a victim of fraud, make sure that you're doing some due diligence. One of those things, place fraud alerts on your credit report. A lot of people don't know this, but you can contact the credit bureaus and say, hey, I want you to put a freeze on the credit report. If anyone tries to access my credit report, whether they're trying to apply for a loan or whatever the case is, they will give you a call. So you can actually they'll take your cell phone number and they'll place it on there. And anytime someone pulls that, now here's the deal. If you place a fraud note on the report, they are, and when I say they, anyone pulling that report legitimately, they have to see and see that request at the end of that report, and that is to call the consumer. All right. If they do not call you, then that's not on you. That's actually on them. Okay. So if you went to, Crane Hyundai and you went to apply for that car loan, or if you didn't, and someone that was acting like you, they go to apply. If the representative, the financial person at Crane, did not reach out to you using that number and verify that this is who you are, then they're liable actually for that particular fraud. So again, it's just one of those things to kind of keep in mind. I have had also where I've been sitting in the place, because I've had it put on mine before, and I've sit in the place, I applied for the loan, and they have to, even though I'm sitting right across the table from them, they have to call that number that's on the report, even though I'm sitting there with the cell phone in my hand, sitting across the desk from them, and they have to call to verify. Okay, so they have to make sure that phone number has been listed and shown that they have attempted to call. Did you have a question?
I do. So can you do that proactively, or do you have to be a victim of fraud before you put the freeze on your credit report?
That's a good question. You can do that at any point in time. Yeah, you don't have to be a victim at that point. That's a great question. As we've mentioned before, there's 3 different bureaus. So again, don't just think about one and not the other 2, because sometimes that information does not get translated between all 3. So if you see that there's something on one, make sure you're going to the other 2 as well and verifying that information is not on them. Because again, most people, most of the places around will report to all 3 companies, but there are some that just don't. So, but just make sure that you are looking at all 3. And if you're a victim of fraud, again, you can actually go to the Federal Trade Commission's website, and you can report that information through there as well. Now, are they a huge help locally? Maybe not in most cases. However, it's good to report it through them because of the fact they can make sure that they can kind of do their homework on their end. Okay, so you have your local authorities looking at things in the local community area, police, that kind of thing. But Federal Trade Commission, they take the report, they work all that information up, and they can find patterns, so they can possibly find these bad folks before they do harm to more people. Okay, so it is good to do that. So you can file a report with them. You can go to their website. You can give them a call. All that information is listed, and you can choose to report your identity theft to local police as well. Normally, a lot of times, especially with local institutions, they will request that you get a copy of, like, that you go to the police department and file a police claim. So they want to know that all these avenues have kind of been touched. And again, is it going to help you on the immediate? Possibly not. That's more on the institution level. However, as more people report this to the FTC and to the local police, they can begin to pick up a pattern. Okay, so they can find who's doing it possibly easier and that kind of thing, and save a lot of fraud for other people. So it is a good idea.
I'm sorry, so go back to the other screen if you don't mind. So are you saying that if you report something to the Federal Trade Commission, it's much for the business?
It's actually for both. It's actually for both, because if you think about it, when you report it to FTC, what they're doing is they're taking and they're gathering all the information from you, and they are now compiling your information and others that are coming in as well to try to find the source of this issue, which is a big deal. So and that's why I'm saying on the local level, you might contact your financial institution, and they have their ways of possibly giving monies back and that kind of thing, and taking care of some of that on that level. This way is more so that they can, it's kind of on a broader scale, if you will. So that that's why I encourage everyone to do it, because if you don't, it stays hush, and more people end up becoming victims of the same thing. So if more and more people will, if you see identity theft happen to you, contact FTC so that they can kind of, again, look at it from a broader scale, and see if they can track it down. So it is important. It's a great question. Just some suggestions to prevent fraud. Be sure your Social Security number is secure at all times. And again, these things are things that you already know. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but when you're in the heat of something, whether it be a transaction, whether it be the new car, you know how it is when you go to the dealership. That new car scent, I don't know what they put in that, but it messes with people's brains. You don't think quite as clearly. It's something to do with that new car smell. But yeah, so you can be in the midst of that transaction and not really be thinking about that application that you just filled out, that you just set out there, so that anybody can walk by and get it. You're not thinking about it. All you're thinking about is that new car, right? So just things like that to definitely be thinking about. Don't just freely share your information when someone calls you up over the phone or shoots you an email asking for it. Make sure that you have vetted that person, to make sure you know who you're giving it to. We have seen this with credit unions, banks. You see this a lot. Collect mail from your mailbox every day. I've actually got a colleague, I stay on her all the time. She tells me all the time, her and her husband, they don't check their mailbox. They'll go check the mailbox about once a week or once every 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, how do you do that? Like, do y'all not have bills? I couldn't do that. And it was funny because one time she came to work one day and she was like, oh my God, I had a check in the mail. It's been there for like 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Make sure you're checking your mail periodically. Make sure you check it every day. Just get in the habit of doing it. Again, yes, most of the time, probably 95% of the time, it's junk mail. I get it. But again, as we were talking about before, if it's a pre-approval, like a credit card pre-approval that's in that mailbox and somebody comes, they can get that information and they can try to commit fraud on you. So just make sure you're looking at that. And use the security features on your mobile phone. Again, I was talking to someone here the other day, cash money, ATM transactions, they're actually declining at a very rapid pace. You're not seeing it as much as what we used to. It's definitely declining. And what is that a result of? Apple Pay, all these things, so PayPal, I mean, you name it. So, the mobile wallet, as you've heard, where you can download your cards and you can pay for things using just your mobile phone. So you can actually download your information, walk up to a place, scan your phone instead of your card, and there you go. All right. So, but if you're not putting proper procedure in place to make sure that information, that your phone is locked, you could be putting yourself out there, okay, to really have something happen. One of the things I do with my phone is, which most phones now, especially most smartphones, they've got that thumbprint ID thing, and I think some of them now, which I don't have this yet, but they'll scan your face. So it's picking up your face. So that's what I'm saying. There's some things that are put in place for your protection. And why are those things put in place? Is it just to make it harder for somebody to make a phone call on your phone? No. It's so that, because again, these cell phone companies know where all the technology is going. And they know just as well as I do what's happening. They know that not many people are using cash anymore. They're going toward that card. And so more and more places are creating avenues to make you transacting business much easier. It's a great thing. on one side, but it's also a bad thing on the other. And if you don't protect it, it can really hurt you. So just some things to think about. Another thing, shred unused receipts. So, you know, we talked about this. When you have something, you got receipts, you've got statements, whatever. If they're unused, you've already done your due diligence, you verified everything, all the information's correct. Please make sure at least once every 6 months to once a year, whatever you decide, make sure those things get shredded. Don't just throw it in the mail. Don't just throw it in the trash, because again, there is information on that. Your personal information is on those. So make sure that you're storing your personal information in a safe place. Again, that kind of goes without saying, but again, how many times do we just leave things even around the house? You think it's safe because it's in the house, right? It's safe because it's sitting, I know exactly where it's at. It's sitting right next to my little thing, right next to my bed right there. Well, maybe that's safe to you, but if someone breaks in the house, it's very easily accessible. So make sure those things are put up. Create passwords for your phone or for bills. A lot of folks are paying their bills online. Credit card companies. So that they've got all these things, ways of accessing all these pieces of information to make payments or to look at things. That's great, but make sure that you're using passwords that are complex. Make sure that it's not just, you know, if your favorite color is green and everybody in your family knows your favorite color is green and green is the closest thing to your heart, you don't want to say green 1. All right, it's pretty easy to find. It's going to be easy to, but so you want to make sure that your passwords are more complex. Make sure that they are something that not just anyone can figure out. And add spending alerts to your debit and credit cards. That is actually something that a lot of companies now are using and have, but just many people don't even know about it. But you can put spending alerts. A lot of times if you sign into your account online, there's different alerts that you can have where, you know, let's say your account balance reaches, you can put a threshold. Account balance reaches $300. I want you to send me an email to let me know. Well, that might be a good thing, because if it doesn't normally drop below that, it might be a good idea to have a fraud, emails, to have an email sent to you. That way you can take a look at it, and it might be completely legit. But if it doesn't normally do that, again, these are things that you want us to contact you, and I say us, your financial institution, to contact you with, to say, hey, you've reached this threshold, beware, right? And it's just one of those tools to help you make sure that you're staying on top of it. A lot of people don't know this, but children are at risk big time. More than 1 million children were victims of identity theft in 2017. That's a lot. The percentage breaks down, and you can see the percentage there. The majority of them, the majority of fraud that you see with kids is between that 0 to 7-year-old spot there. So it definitely can happen to kids. So make sure that if you have kids, if you got grandkids, make sure you're telling your kids, put their information in a secure place. Just because you're an adult and you've got all the money, you've got all the credit cards and all this information, it does not mean that the child, because they don't have as much as you do, they've still got that social security number. And so it can still be used, fraud can still be committed. And so you definitely want to look at that. Just a couple of ways you can protect your kids. Again, make sure that their social security number and date of birth, make sure that information is in a nice, safe place. Don't just leave it out. Don't just stick it in a purse, because again, if somebody takes off with the purse or a wallet, bad guys got it. So make sure that information is in a secure place. And watch for red flags, such as like weird phone calls where they're asking for little Johnny's, they're wanting to talk to little Johnny. Little Johnny is a month old. Okay. You say, does that happen? Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah.
I was a victim of identity theft under 18.
Hmm.
Now, is there like an
You know, kind of the same steps that we've kind of already talked about is what you're going to want to do with that. Yeah, there's not anything any different really that you're going to be able to do for children that you do for adult. It's kind of one and the same. Yeah, but it's a great question. It definitely can happen. I read a read a statistic here. It's been a couple of weeks ago now, but they actually said that one of the major ways that children's information is taken and used is through avenues of, and it could be family, could be friends, but a lot of times they said it's an immediate acquaintance, someone that you wouldn't suspect, and so and it's because they have more access to that child's information, and so it is best to make sure. That's why just make sure the information is in a nice, safe place. You know where it's at. It's only accessible by you, and then that'll help. Definitely will help. I have heard of the child's social security number being used again for tax fraud. So a person goes, they file their taxes, and they file it under a fictitious social security number, and it just happens to be a little 2-month-old. You know, how's that not caught on the IRS level? I don't know. But there are times where that can happen as well. So yes, kids are just as much at risk as you are. One of the other things is elder fraud, and I've actually witnessed this several times as well. And it's kind of a sad thing because sometimes if it's an elderly person, it could be a dementia issue, could have something to do with a mental issue, and because of their age, and people will take advantage of it. There are bad folks out there that will take advantage of older people as well. And again, I personally have witnessed that. If signs of elderly abuse, increased interest in individuals' assets. So if you see somebody that's going, hey, Uncle so-and-so, so does he still have that property over on, or hey, do they still have that car? Do they still have a bank account at Bank of America? That kind of thing. They've never asked those questions before. It's best to, again, kind of be watching. Person suddenly changes names of power of attorneys or names on wills, that kind of thing. This is one I've actually seen. We knew that this was probably not legit. The person had no other family for us to contact. We didn't know anyone else to contact. We did everything we could do, but for whatever reason, this elderly lady had found someone online and was changing everything. And by the time it was all said and done, it was a mess. But when you start to see those types of things, that's probably a telltale sign there's a bigger issue here. Somebody's trying to commit fraud. They can't explain certain financial withdrawals. You confront them about something and they say, well, I don't know, I don't remember that. Again, a sign that there could be a potential issue. Or they're transferring assets to someone that they call their friend, or it could be a family member, which we have seen that as well. So there's a lot that can happen with that. For elder abuse, now this is kind of interesting because for elder abuse, and again, it's not just talking about this particular company, Adult Protective Services, is not just referring to, it's not a company that just deals with financial fraud. They deal with all sorts of abuse. Okay, so that's why we've oftentimes said, if you suspect something, it's best to contact the agent, let them know that what you're suspecting, what you're seeing. They'll ask information, and they will many times try to do their due diligence to see if they can help alleviate some of that. So, and again, all that information is there below as well. This is some important information. You've got TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, so you've got all of their information there. Of course, that's your 3 credit bureaus, so those are biggies. The Federal Trade Commission, so I've placed their phone number, the website address, the whole bit, the IRS, Social Security Administration. I put Social Security Administration on there because if your wallet or your purse was ever stolen, or someone broke into your home and they took your Social Security card, you need to have probably, a lot of times you're going to need another way to get that And that's why I added that on there, so that you can contact Social Security, let them know this is what has transpired, and they can get you a new card. And that is the end of that. Anybody got any questions? I know y'all have already asked a few. Anybody got anything else?
On the free credit report, so you get one per agency, so every 4 months technically you can
Yeah.
rotate those.
Exactly. I personally do that. Now, when you get their credit report, because I've had some people when they've even called me up, and they're like, "Well, Tim, if I went out there and I went to get my credit report, and they won't give me my credit score." No, they won't. The main thing that you're needing to do with that report is to verify information. So the credit score is not, now you can get it, but you're going to pay for it with all three companies. But the credit score is not as much what we're needing to verify as it is the information. So you're looking at the account information. You're looking not only just for a new credit card company or a new auto loan company that might be listed that's not yours, but you also want to look at if there's any kind of derogatory information, collection items, public records, things that you don't have a clue. And it very well could have been that someone used your information. Of course, they ain't going to make the payment for you. So when they don't make the payment, the company has no way of getting a hold of you, because most of the time the address is not going to be your address, and the phone number is definitely not going to be your phone number. So they don't have a way of getting a hold of you. They can't send you mail. They can't call you. And so the only thing they can do is report it on the report. So when you see something like that, again, telltale sign, this is probably what has happened and transpired. And again, I'm telling you all this, and I've said this before, and I'm just kind of reiterating this. This is not one of those things to bring fear. It's just one of those things to bring in an awareness to the issue. And it is. It definitely is an issue. We're seeing breaches more and more and more. As I've mentioned before, bad guys aren't stupid, and they know what they're doing, and they're pretty good at what they do. So it's just when, as consumers, when we're not doing our due diligence to take care of our own personal finances, to ensure that all the information is there, you're definitely a key player, because when it happens, you have to take some of that responsibility. Yeah.
I don't think I heard you mention it, but I know one of the things that I've done with any of my store credit cards, I always have a code put on it, so before the transaction can be completed, they have to ask for my driver's license.
That's good. Yeah. She was mentioning that she has a code actually put on the card itself, and I'm not aware of that, but anything like that will help. Anything like that, and that's where I know from time to time you'll see different publications come from your financial institution. A lot of times, if okay, it's not my statement, I really don't care what it is, it's junk mail. And chances are it could be something just like that, where they're going, hey, we've added another safety feature that you might want to check out. So it's best before you throw it in the mail, or throw it in the garbage, make sure that you're looking at it to see if it is something that you can use. Yes, ma'am.
Have you heard that when you use your card to purchase gas, that you should hit the clear button after the transaction, because you can be a victim of identity theft through that as well?
I have heard that. What ends up happening a lot of times with that particular instance, the reason that they tell you to do that is because some people will not wait until the transaction has cleared. So a lot of times it will clear on its own, and especially after the transaction has transpired and it comes back and it gives you the thank you. The transaction has already expired. The information's already gone from that terminal. But some people, like sometimes it'll ask you if you want a receipt. Okay, some people, they don't care to have a receipt, and they're not paying any attention to that, and they just take off. That can leave that avenue open. So it is best to make sure that, I think that's a great idea. Hit clear, hit cancel, whatever needs to be done at that point to make sure that the transaction's cleared. I always, especially at a gas terminal, after I get gas, I wait until I see that it comes back with a thank you and it goes back to its original screen. I've always made that a practice. Absolutely. That's a good point. Anybody else? No questions, thoughts, concerns, ideas? No. Well, I want to thank you guys again for coming. I hope that it helped. I hope you got some information that you can use to better protect yourself. If you have any other questions, definitely give me a call, or I mean, most of you guys, y'all see me around here pretty often. So, stop me, say, hey, Tim, I got a question for you, or email me, whatever. I'll be glad to help you. If that's it, thank you guys very much.